Good? Oh, great, we've got a microphone now. This is great. Good morning, Norway. Great to see everyone. Thank you all so much for coming here bright and early on day 2 of NDC. So today we're going to be focusing on the collaboration piece of DevOps. So hopefully you're all in the right place. If not, welcome anyway. To start off with, my name is Mish. I'm on the developer relations team at GitHub. That's our cute little developer advocate for our team. I have stickers of that, so if you want to come down, I have some stickers at the front here when we're done. But you'll find GitHub on pretty much every social media platform available, and you'll also find me as well. So if you are tweeting, I think we're still calling it tweeting. I don't like the zeeting. I don't know. So if you're tweeting or Instagramming or putting any of this on socials, please tag us and also hashtag NDC Oslo for the conference today. So we're going to cover off a few things today. We'll first look at what is DevOps. A lot of people talk about this idea of DevOps, and so let's go into this definition first of DevOps. Then we'll talk about collaboration, how collaboration fits into this whole idea of DevOps. Then we'll look at developer experience, a relatively new term that's kind of popped up in the last year or so. We'll look at that and how that relates. We'll look at building your dream team. We'll look at working across teams and why I think that's really important. And then we'll look at some of the collaboration pieces we have on GitHub for people to work really well across teams, whether you're a developer or a non-developer as well. So first up, what is DevOps? I love this piece from Emily Freeman. This is a video we have on YouTube, and there's links to this. I'll put up a slide at the end with all the links that I'm talking about today, so you don't have to go find them yourself. This is a video we did with Emily Freeman, the author of DevOps for Dummies, and I love what she says here, which is nobody actually knows what DevOps is, and that would make them an expert, and there's no such thing as that. But she actually does go into a little bit of what DevOps is. But this is a really good definition from Donovan Brown from Microsoft. And he says that DevOps is a union of people, process, and products. And we do this to enable continuous delivery of our products to our end users. Because at the end of the day, we're all working for companies that have products and services, and we want to be able to service our customers who are using our products and services. And we want to be able to create the best products we have for our customers and our users. Emily Freeman kind of elaborates on this definition a little bit more, and she says it's also about engineering culture, this idea of collaborating and owning and learning with the purpose of accelerating the software development lifecycle from idea to production. So we've got two kind of ideas here. We're like the union of people, processes, and tools to enable software development, and this idea of creating a culture of collaboration to then be able to deliver software to our users. Now, I don't think this is just only a software thing. I think this applies to anyone building a kind of a product or service. So this idea of culture is also important, and both Emily and Donovan have spoken about how important culture is to DevOps. So if we look at DevOps as 4 different pillars. This is something from one of our GitHub friends, and this is what they call out DevOps is. These 4 pillars of DevOps. And this is collaboration, having workflows and automation to be able to automate the software development, having security and compliance along the way, and also continuous improvement, not just shipping out our software, but being able to improve along the way. Now, I think collaboration is really important because I think collaboration really supports the other 3 pillars of DevOps. If we don't have good collaboration, we don't have good workflows and automation, we're not thinking about security along the way, and we're also not continuously improving if we don't collaborate along the way. So collaboration. Collaboration is nothing new, right? Collaboration is something that's been around for quite a while. We've been doing it for years and years. But collaboration is something that I think is really important, especially when it comes to software development. And it's not just collaboration with our software developers, but it's also collaboration across the entire company that I think is important. So if we can't collaborate effectively, we can't ship really good software and services for our people and our users. And if we don't collaborate effectively, we're not learning from one another as we're going. So therefore, we're not doing that continuous improvement. So teamwork, really big part of collaboration. Everyone achieves more if we work together. By thinking about teamwork and working together across our teams, we're able to look at one another's ideas, look at how we can learn from one another, And it also ensures that our goals are achieved in a timely manner if we're all working together towards the same goal. If everyone in a team is kind of off in their own little boats going towards their own little goals, they don't really get anywhere fast. But again, this teamwork encompasses a rather large aspect of culture. And culture is really important because we know that in DevOps, culture or DevOps and being able to do all these practices are as much about a cultural shift as it is about the tools and technology that we use along the way. And I'll give you an example. I like doing Twitch streaming. So on Twitch, I do live coding, I play video games, and there's kind of an unspoken rule in our community that even if I'm playing video games, someone can come in and ask me a question about anything they want. So we're in Fortnite one day, playing around, killing all our enemies, and someone goes, "Hey Mish, tell me about DevOps." And I'm like, cool, let me just get this person first. But he said, I really like what you're talking about. And I explained to him this whole idea of collaboration and having the 4 different pillars. He said, that's really great, but does it actually work? And I was like, what do you mean? And he said, well, I did a similar talk with my company about DevOps and how important it is to have the right tools for the job and the right things and the right processes. And the company went, yeah, this is really good. And, we're going to do all these things. But then a month later, 3 months later, 6 months later, they're still doing the same thing that they were doing previously. And I said, well, what you've got there is a cultural problem where everyone thinks it's a good idea to do DevOps and everyone thinks it's a good idea to put these tools and processes in place, but the company's stuck in this idea of, we'll just do it how we previously did because we don't want to change, right? So DevOps is as much about this cultural shift as it is about the tools and technology that we use. So one of the reasons why a lot of people don't do these types of new things is because they refuse to change. They're stuck in the ways of, it's always been done like that. We're not changing because we've got a subscription to that type of software, or somebody implemented this 20 years ago and we're still going to be doing the same thing, right? Now, why I think DevOps is really, really important these days is because developers are doing more and more than they ever have before. So my talk is titled, DevOps isn't just about developing. And I think that's really important to understand that as developers, our roles have shifted a lot. No longer are we spending all our day coding and writing lines of code. We do so much more today than we ever have before. We're doing things like budgeting and backlogs, and we've got all this responsibility, and we're thinking about security along the way and compatibility and all these other things that we have to think about as developers. And in fact, developers actually spend more than 75% of their time on non-coding tasks. So this is from some research that's come out recently, and I'll put this up in the resources as well. But we're doing things like code review and pull requests and looking at security and issues and vulnerabilities and documentation. We're going to meetings and having all this time spent away from our editor writing lines of code. So coding time here is defined as in the IDE writing specific lines of code, right? But when we're doing all this and we're spending a lot more time on non-coding tasks, how does that impact our efficiency? Now, this is a study that the Global Code Time Report did, and they looked at the time that developers are spending outside coding. And they're now saying that we're increasingly facing more and more constraints in our development time. So while we're spending less time coding, we're also facing all these inefficiencies around our deployment teams, our bogging down in systems and processes that just aren't doing what we need them to do. Again, DevOps is as much about a cultural shift as it is about the tools and technology that we're using here. So if we're giving developers bad tools and we're bogging them down in these processes, we're not going to ship efficient software. We're not going to service our customers, and therefore our competitors are going to win out here. Again, from a similar kind of study, 37% of employee time, this is across all industries as well, not just development, but is wasted due to poor collaboration. So poor time switching between tasks, talking to people, meetings that don't need to happen. We've all seen those memes online, right? That meeting could have been an email, right? So we're spending a lot more time these days. We've got all this technology around us. We're spending all this time being inefficient. And I really like this interesting stat here, which is 23 minutes spent every time we have to switch a tool. So my husband was recently working at an engineering firm, and they said, we need to move off the Adobe suite because it's quite expensive to use. And they all the engineers went, but we all use PDFs for all our things. And they said, well, that's okay. We've given you 8 different options that you can change. And they're like, these aren't 8 options. We have to go from the first thing and export it to the second program and then use it, read it in the third program, sign it with the fourth program. And I said, we'll give them this stat, which means that if they're switching between 8 different types of products or 8 different types of software to get the same outcome at the end of the day, they're actually wasting an entire day of work switching between these different softwares. So yes, while some products might be a cost thing, we've got to weigh that up too. What is the thing that we want to do here? How do we want to be efficient? Now, what this is kind of leading to is this new thing that we called developer experience. And what we need to do to ensure that our employees aren't wasting time on poor collaboration and aren't wasting time on switching tools that aren't frankly needed. This whole idea of developer experience is really important. So developer experience is about giving our developers and giving developers the best tools for the job. So developer experience is, what do we experience as developers? Right? We know that developers do their best work when they're happy. We know that developers do their best work when they're using the tools that they want to use, rather than being told, you need to use this one because it's cheap, or you need to use this one because it's what we've been using for 20 years, even though there might be something better out there. So again, this is a relatively new type of term, but it's this idea that developer experience is a system of technology, processes, and culture that influences the effectiveness of the type of software we build at the end of the day. Now, this is a definition we put out recently from GitHub, but I look at this definition and say, well, that's very similar to DevOps, right? This idea of tools and technology and culture influencing what we actually ship at the end of the day. And developer experience is really important in terms of understanding how our developers work together as well. So one of the questions we ask when we put out this definition, this was as part of a larger blog post, and one of the questions we ask when we're looking at developer experience is, do you have communities of practices where you're bringing your teams together to learn from one another and share ideas, right? This whole idea of collaborating. And our ex-CEO of GitHub, Nat Freeman, used to say coding is a team sport. It's actually one of the largest team sports in existence if we look at open source. So how are we collaborating together? If it's a team sport, we're working in teams of developers, how do we collaborate effectively? Rarely are developers a solo developer in a company these days, right? We're all mostly working in teams, so how do we work effectively? The other reason why I like talking about collaboration is because it's actually one of the top most in-demand skills for the future of work. Now, I do future of work in quotation marks because I no longer call it the future of work, because the future of work is now here. This idea of this age of AI where we're now being almost questioned in the types of work we do. So collaboration is really important to ensure we have a job in this new age of work, in this new age of AI. So if we're working effectively and we need to collaborate effectively, we also need to look at our type of team composition. So when we're working in a team, we've got ourselves here. This is little Octocat here. Now, if we work in a team and we surround ourselves with all the same types of people, are we going to collaborate effectively? Are we going to produce software and products that are effective for our customers? I say probably not. And the reason why I don't think this is really effective collaboration if we surround ourselves with all the same type of people, with all the same ideas and backgrounds and experiences, is because we all think the same. Which means when there's a problem, we're going to tackle it from the same point of view. When there's a challenge, we're going to approach it in a similar way. So I think that we need to think about our team composition when we're looking at collaboration. In contrast, if we surround ourselves with all different types of people and what we call diversity, then we're able to build better products for our customers and our users, because we're able to take into account multiple points of view, multiple perspectives, but we're also able to learn from one another. Both this idea of DevOps and developer experience is about learning from one another. Collaboration, about learning from one another. So unless we have different types of people within our team, we're not really going to learn from one another effectively. Now, if anyone has looked at me online, you'll know I'm also known as the hackathon queen, so I like looking at hackathons. And if we look at our team composition of a hackathon, we often talk about the 3 types of roles within a hackathon. Now, unless you're doing a hackathon by yourself, which there are individual hackathons these days, but a lot of hackathons are done in teams. And so we need to look at our team composition and what we call the hacker, the hustler, the hipster. This means that there's 3 types of roles in a hackathon. There's your hacker, which is your developer. There's your hustler, which is your kind of business and product person. And then there's your hipster, your design type of person. Now, if we have 3 hackers in a team and we don't have any designers and any kind of business people, we might build something that has no use case. We might build something that has no UI, UX. So we need to think about our team composition. And it's really important when we're looking across organizations as well. So say we have our development team, a little construction octocat here. We might have a support team or maybe a sales team. We might have maybe a marketing team or a design team. We'll call this a design team. And we might have our management team over here. Now, if these 4 teams, there's a lot more teams than this in an organization, but we'll simplify it with these 4. But if these 4 teams aren't collaborating and working effectively, then the product and service that we build for our customers might not be what the customers actually need. We might have our developers in one bucket going, yeah, this is going to be great, everyone's going to love this. Then we have our support and our sales team selling something that our developers aren't actually building. How often does that happen? Oh, yes, we can definitely do that. You go to the developer and they're like, no, that's not even technologically possible. So if they're not collaborating, then we're selling what's not being able to be developed. And we're also not taking the feedback from our customers and putting that into the development pipeline. Our marketing and our design team might be off designing and marketing something that's completely not what we're building. And our management team's sitting there going, what's going on again? So if we're not collaborating and communicating effectively, we're not working towards that same goal. We're not able to build what our customers and our clients need. But when we do collaborate effectively, and again, there's a lot more lines in this, but to simplify it, I just put 2. But if we collaborate effectively, then we are able to build the products and services that our customers and our users need. And because we're so ingrained with technology these days, we often have some sort of tool in the middle that can help us collaborate effectively. And I put a GitHub logo there because I'm going to be talking about GitHub. But there are a lot of tools out there for collaboration. And over particularly the last few years, during the pandemic, a lot more of these tools popped up. So here's a couple of them here. Now, a lot of these are project management-y style tools, but they're all designed for effective communication and collaboration across teams, particularly when we're talking about teams that aren't just developers. So a lot of these products are no code. You don't need to know how to do coding to use Asana or GatherTown or Zoom. We're able to use these to collaborate. It doesn't matter what type of team we have. Now, as developers, we often collaborate on our code and we collaborate in a place a lot of people collaborate on GitHub. So I'm going to spend the next bit of my talk talking about some of the features that GitHub has in order for people to collaborate effectively. Now, what I like about some of these is that a lot of these require you not to be a developer. You don't have to know coding to do a lot of the things I'm going to show you here today. Now, GitHub is what we're now calling the AI-powered developer platform. There's over 100 million people using GitHub, which is pretty incredible. And we see a lot of collaboration happening on open source projects, but also organizations using GitHub to collaborate. Now, I said back at the start that developers are spending more and more time not writing lines of code. They're doing so many more things, and here's just a couple of them again. We're looking at developers are now responsible even for doing releases, deploying, operating the code, looking at bugs and logs and monitoring things, even having to plan and ideate and build the products as well. So because we at GitHub understand that developers are spending up to 75% of their time not doing code, we at GitHub wanted to enable all developers, no matter what part of the software development lifecycle they're working on, we wanted to give them the tools that they need to be able to do these things all in the one platform. So this is the GitHub platform. There are so many different things as part of this platform now. So GitHub Copilot's another talk I give as well. And there's so many parts of the platform that are now powered by AI. There's lots of different things for productivity, security, scale, and even all these new integrations, some of which we've just announced. But what I want to focus on today is this collaboration piece. There's so many things and so many products in GitHub that I just want to focus on the collaborating pieces today. So what we have for collaboration, these are in order of what was on the slide previously. Code review, which many developers will be familiar with. Pull requests, again, many developers will hopefully be familiar with this. Merge queue, which is something relatively new. I think it was announced last year. We'll talk through that. We'll look at projects, something that has received a lot of love and attention in the last couple of years. We've completely revamped GitHub projects from what it used to be. Issues, which is part of the GitHub projects experience. Discussions, which is a way for people to collaborate and discuss within the repository and even have links back to the code. Search, something kind of new-ish, and also team management. Team management is really important to understand how we collaborate with one another. So I'm going to go through some of these features. I'm going to start with team management because I think that's kind of an important one. Once you've kind of got your repository, how do you then get your team and collaborate together? Now, I mentioned that a lot of these things are used specifically, developers using these, but also non-developers are using these as well. You can use a lot of these tools and features even if you're not a developer. And I'll show you an example. Last year, my now husband and I, we got engaged. And like all the good developers, when you get engaged, you turn to GitHub. Now, I have a talk that I do on how I used GitHub Copilot to build the website for our wedding. But one of the things I did when we got engaged was like, well, we're going to need to plan a wedding. So let's use GitHub to plan our wedding. So I built just a repository, standard repository, private, because didn't want everyone seeing exactly what we're planning for the wedding. And I made a relatively simple README file there. So repository for planning our wedding, and I've got the date there. Now, because I'm planning the wedding with my husband, fiance at the time, I needed to add him to the repository in order to collaborate. So the way we add users to a repository is once we've got our repository all set up and ready to go, we can go over into our settings for the repository itself. We can click on our collaborators on the left-hand side there, and we can add people to our repository. So I'm going to go in here and add my husband in and send it to him, and it's going to sit there waiting until he accepted it. Luckily, he accepted it. Thank you. Otherwise, that would have been very awkward. And then once he's there, I can remove him if I needed to, if we ended up not doing the wedding, which is a bit annoying. But I can go in now. Now that he's in there, I can now go and change and manage his access. Now, I've only added him in this instance because it's just him and I working on this repository together. But I can add a whole bunch of people. I can add my team, and I can change the type of access they have. So say, for example, I have someone who comes in temporarily as a contractor. I can give them temporary access. If we want to add non-developers into here as well, we want them to be able to see what we're doing and see what we're up to, but maybe not touch the code because you never know what's going to happen there. We can add them in as viewers. So we can change all these different types of roles within the repository. So now that I have my husband added in, we can start tracking and managing some of our project. So the first thing I want to do is create an issue. And I'm going to create one big overall tracking issue to track the project itself. So we go over here and create a new issue and give it a title. So this is going to be our overall tracking issue for the wedding. And I can go and start adding some titles in here and also some dot points. Now these are tasks that I've added in here because they've got the little square brackets. I'm just going to add the whole in really quickly and then submit that issue. I've got a couple of spelling errors, so just ignore that. I was more focused on the wedding at this point. So we've got this here, and you can see this is our overall tracking issue. It's looking all right. So we can have a quick look there, and now we can go and assign, I can assign myself and my husband if I need to, because now he's added into the repository, I can make sure we're both assigned there. So we're both assigned, and that's looking good. Now you may notice up the top here as well, is that gonna come up here? Yes, there we go. We can see we've got 27 tasks for this project. So it's gone in and put all these boxes in as individual tasks that I need to do for the project, and we're saying that this issue is currently open, so that's good. One thing I like to do is color code everything. I love color coding, so I'm going to add some labels to this issue to make it a little bit more colorful, but also to give it a little bit more meaning and understanding. So here I can go in and add some labels. These are some custom labels that I've created for this repository. So here I can go in, click that little edit button, and edit all the labels for this. So a lot of the default labels are things like bug, documentation, good first issue. So I removed those because I didn't need them for the wedding. I can add in and tick the boxes that I want. I can have pretty much almost unlimited labels here, but I'm going to tick a few boxes here that kind of make sense for this issue. So booking required, times required, and a few other things there are required. So now we're looking pretty good here. Now what I can do is I can now use this as the basis for creating my project. So if I go in here and say, okay, we're going to create this as a project now, what I can do is go and change each individual issue into its own each individual task into its own individual issue. So what I'm doing there is I'm clicking on the button on the side. So if I hover my mouse over here, a little button will come up and say convert to issue. So I can do that, and I can do that for all of them there. And then once I've got those, we can see we've got 2, 3, 4, and we've got all these individual issues. Now I can go and open up a project and create a new project within this repository. There's all these templates available now for project. These are all the default templates. What's actually really cool is if you have an org, you can create a standard template for your organization. So say, for example, you have an organization, you have, say, 1,000 repositories in your organization, and you want every single project within your org to use the same project structure. Say it might be a dev sprint, it might be some other way of tracking your project. You can go and create a template that sits at the organization level so that whenever anyone within the org creates a new project under one of the repositories, it's always the same, which is really cool. Now here I'm just going to use one of the default templates because I just kind of need a basic template for this one. So I'm going to click on a table here. I'm going to create it as a table to start with. Now I can go in and add the issues that I just created by typing a hash here. And then I can select the repository. So you may notice that we can actually select multiple repositories for this project. So even though a project might live in one repository, we can add issues from other projects as well. We can also add pull requests into projects as well. So if you might be working on like a big alpha project that sits at the org level and it might have multiple repositories and multiple projects as part of it, you can add the issues from those projects into a project board. But here I'm just going to add the ones from the wedding, so I can click each one individually, and I can go through and click them all. I can also use the keyboard and press tab, but this might be pretty boring and long if I have lots of issues, so I can also go and click this button down the bottom and say add items from this repository, and then I can click and select to add all these items. Now it's showing me 25 recent items because they're all those recent issues that I just created. If this was a development project, I could also add in those pull requests. They would come up in that list there as well. So we can add all those, and it's saying there's no more items to add because you've now added all the issues. And then we can see them all there. They look pretty nice. Now, something else that I like doing is changing the view on my project. So first of all, we'll name it. Give it a name that's a bit descriptive as well as what it is about. So I'm going to put that in there. And then we're going to go down and save that. So that's all done, and that project is now named. Now, if I head back into the table there, I can go through and I can change what this looks like now. We created all those nice labels, but I can't see them here. So I can say I want to add a box for seeing those labels, and there's all those labels there too. And I don't really need the status, so I can hide that. So I can really customize how I want to view this table that I've got here. Now, once I've done that, I can go through, I'm going to change the name again because we'll make it a little bit more descriptive this time. So you can edit the labels or the names of your project. So say if you have a project that you don't know what the product is going to be called yet, you can just give it a standing name. You can change it later. So now I've created a second view for my project because I want to put it in that board kind of view, that Kanban style. And once I go through, it does take a little while, so I don't want to show you an entire thing. I do have a whole talk on projects if anyone is interested at some point. But once I change the views, I can go through, I can edit anything I like, I can edit the fields, I can change things. You can see up the top here, I've even edited the columns. So put in marriage prep, the bridal party, across there. And all those kinds of things are there so that I can change exactly what I want the user to see in this instance. What I can also do is I can create temporary views of projects, and that'll change the URL up the top, and I can copy and paste that URL and share it with someone. Say, for example, I only want to see what is assigned to me. I can create an @me view, and then whoever looks at it will just automatically see what is assigned to them. So the projects is really great, and we can use it for so many other things as well. So here I've got it for our wedding. We can see all those pretty labels that I've added in. You can see the little icons for who's assigned to each one, and we can also have a look at this table view as well. And it breaks it out, the table view, into the similar columns that I have in the project board view there as well. So this is really cool. It's just a great tool that I like to use for collaborating across multiple teams. My husband is not a developer, so being able to collaborate like this in a way is really great for him. Now, also in this demo I've showed you, there's zero coding, aside from like tagging the lines of like the headings and things. There's very, very little coding involved in here. The next one is discussions. Something else that I think has a lot of potential. So this is the GitHub community discussions. So we use discussions within GitHub to make product announcements, for people to submit reports or bugs and get information and collaborate with everyone else in the community. So this is a completely public discussion. So anyone can go in here, anyone can answer things, anyone can upvote things. So let's have a look at this. So we've got discussions here. So for GitHub, we use this to gather feedback from all the different products and services that we have. So here's one up the top here. We created a discussion for when we literally just announced GitHub Copilot extensions, now available in public beta. So we've got a little announcement there. We can see we've got different votes down the bottom. I can hide it, I can upvote it. We're having these threaded style conversations with one another as well. So someone's here, this looks great, can't wait to try it. I can write something here, this is super awesome, can't wait to try them out. So by having this living alongside your code, it makes it really easy to stay within the platform. I can link out to issues, I can link out to pull requests and different code as well here. So having this has been a really great time for GitHub. So I put a link to this as well if you want to check this one out. You can enable discussions on pretty much any repository, and I think you can enable them at the org level as well. So this one, the GitHub one, is enabled at the org level, and we can all collaborate and discuss. Now I want to switch gear a little bit. The last two things I've showed you are kind of non-coding parts of collaboration, but the next couple I want to show you are some coding things. So I'm here in Norway from Australia. I travel a lot for speaking engagements, and I like to eat food. But one of my problems is I have a lot of dietary requirements. So a couple of years ago, we were discussing this idea of people with dietary requirements and the challenges we have when we travel. Now, I'm gluten and dairy free and allergic to a few other things. Not every culture understands that, but also a lot of countries we go to don't necessarily speak English as their first language. Whilst everyone speaks English here, a lot of the ingredients that I'm looking at on the things are all in Norwegian. I'm like, I have no idea what's going on here. And if I tell someone something, that doesn't always translate. So what we wanted to do is create an application where you could put in your dietary requirements in whatever language you like, and then translate those into the native language that you want to go to. Now, yes, Google Translate does some things like this, but I want it to be a little bit more understanding, and I got people to come in and use this project who are native speakers. So we set this up. So this is our repository here, And I set this one up, and we've got some things here. We've got our discussions tab over here. We can see that this is all getting ready. And so this is actually this is how to set up discussions. So first of all, we're going to set up a discussion. We just go to settings, and I can set up this discussion. So the reason I wanted to set the discussions up for this one is so that we could all talk about what languages we might want to introduce into the repository. So if we go here, I can set a welcome discussion so anyone who comes to this repository has an idea of what we're doing. Again, this requires very little coding to set up, but I can change this as we're going. So it gives you a default to start with when you're setting up a discussion. So I'm saying, this is here to help people with dietary restrictions to be able to still travel and enjoy what we do while we travel. So here, I'm putting this in, and then we ended up having quite a lot of people jump on and be like, yes, I'll do it in French, or I'll do it in Arabic, or I'll do Italian. And so it was a really good way to understand what types of languages we wanted to do. So I put each language as like a different thing, and then people upvoted the languages that we wanted, and then I found people for doing those. So this is how to set up the discussion. Again, we can change this however we want. So if we're setting this up for, say, the GitHub one, where we want to people to give us feedback, we can write all that in there. We can write things like the community guidelines, code of conduct, things like that. So this is what we're doing here. So to start with, let's tell us why you came here. Are you someone who has dietary? Are you someone who travels? Are you someone who wants to? We also set this up during Hacktoberfest. So we're like, if you're just here to get your Hacktoberfest pull request, that's totally fine. We get some nice confetti when we set up our first discussion. So it's all ready to go. Now let's have a look at some of the coding things, or the more developer-focused collaboration tools. So this is one many of you probably are familiar with, which is the code review. So when I was doing this, we had lots of people come in and do pull requests. We've got 0 open pull requests at the moment because I was like very meticulous. Like every time one came in, I was like, let's review it and get it merged. So we're going to look at some of the closed pull requests here. But we can have a look, and we'll scroll down and we'll pick one. Let's say, okay, this one is the one that added the actual translation feature into the homepage. So we can have a look at the files change. Many of you will be very familiar with this. So we can have a look, we can load the diffs, we can look at what's been added, what's been removed into the code review. And once this all looks pretty good, so we're reviewing it here, yeah, it looks all right. I could open this up in a code space if I wanted to see how it looked and if it's actually working. We can add checks into this as well if we needed to. But from my point of view, this all looks pretty good, so I merged this one in. We can have a look at the conversation. This person's done a really good job of adding in a nice pull request description as well, like before and after. Here's what it looks in like case 1, case 2. I was like, man, I need more people, like more developers like this in my team with really good pull request summaries. So I was like, wow, this is awesome, thank you. So we can have this conversation here, and then that's what it looks like on the page there. So we can select the language, the drop down, what we want, and then we can put a whole paragraph in here as well. So this looks really good. Now, again, like I said, I wish I had more developers in my team that did really nice pull request summaries like that. But we can have a look at some of these pull requests. So here's another one. Again, I had some really good developers working on this project with me. Another great one that someone's like, this is it. This is the custom 404 page. Here's what it looks like in light and dark mode. But here's another pull request with no description. Amy Kaepernick, who's actually a speaker at this conference, usually does really good pull request summaries, but this one didn't. So I'm going to go through, I'm going to use GitHub Copilot pull request summaries to give me a summary of what this pull request does, since Amy didn't put it in herself. So I can have a look at that. So it's given me a summary, and it's even given me the deep links into what that pull request does. So this is really good because more than half the pull requests that exist on GitHub don't have pull request summaries. So this is a feature that we've built into pull requests as part of GitHub Copilot Enterprise. So you do need to be on GitHub Copilot Enterprise to use this feature, but it's such a cool feature. So if you are working for a company, and if you're not on GitHub Copilot for Business, or you're thinking about having a look at it, this is one of the reasons why you should definitely look at GitHub Copilot Enterprise. Another one we've got is merge queues. So this project that I'm working on, we've only got 83 pull requests. There's not too many pull requests that are added into this repository. So I'm not going to get too many conflicts. There was actually a conflict when someone was like, hey, let's change the entire folder structure while everyone else is still trying to like send in pull requests. And one of my senior developer friends saw it and was like, ha, have fun with that one, Mish. And I was like, oh, thanks. But usually in a project this size, we're not going to get a lot of pull request clashes. We're not going to get a lot of issues when we try and merge our code. But when we're working in teams, when there are, like, say, for example, a really busy branch where lots of people are trying to merge, we can run into some issues here. So if we have a look at that, and if we're trying to merge and someone else has merged and then it's going to break main, there's a lot of issues that go on. So that's why we introduced this thing called merge queue. Now, this is a demo one of my colleagues did, but basically what merge queues do is, like, before we had merge queues, you usually had to run all like your CI checks, and for every single update you had, right? And then if another developer merged a pull request before you did, you had to go and run all your checks again because they've now merged into a new like brand, and the thing's changed, right? So what we introduced was this idea of merge queue so that we could queue up all the pull requests so that the CI checks creates like a temporary branch, and the CI can run across the whole thing, and then each pull request would get merged one after the other. So here is our merge queue. So we can say when the queue is ready, we want to merge this pull request. So here's a pull request. We've got a couple of pull requests going here. And this is, again, really important for developer experience, because if we, as developers, are being constantly blocked because of something happening, then that is not a good developer experience. It's also reducing the time, increasing the time for us to ship out the product, right? So what we're doing here is we've created this like temporary kind of branch, and the checks are running on this entire branch. And then when each one is ready, we can go in and those can all be merged automatically. So this is what our queue looks like. We can see like there's 8 pull requests queued here. And then the check runs on the whole thing. If we need to, we can also remove like our pull request. So say we've changed it, we can remove it and add it back into the queue. And those checks only need to run once on this temporary branch, rather than each individual pull request, me as an individual developer having to go run all those checks myself, then sit there, wait for it to be merged, then find out that someone else has merged in above me, then I have to run all the checks again. So it just removes that that bottleneck, and it kind of does it all in the back end for us, which is really great. So developers can track their pull requests in the queue. They can see where it sits in the queue. As I said, if they need to remove it, they can, and they can see when it gets merged in. So merge queues is something that we released, again, I think it was last year, and I've got a link to the full video for this, as well as like documentation if you want to read a little bit more about this. Search, something, again, we introduced kind of recently. So GitHub is a big place. There are over 100 million developers on GitHub. There's over 4 million repositories or something ridiculous number. And it can be very hard to find what you need on GitHub. So we introduced this search a little while ago, which is I can go through and I can now search. So I can look at my repository myself. I can click a particular repository that I want to look at, and I can search that particular repository. We also have global search. This is relatively new, so I search Angular there because Angular just got released. And I can go through and I can have a look, and it can give me all the results on GitHub. So if I just go back a little bit there, I'm just going to pause that one because it's really cool. So if I go up here and I can search, I'm going to go back forward a little bit. I haven't used this one. It's skipping on me. That's all right. I'll just let it play through. So again, we can go through, we can search either a particular repository, I can search through a particular file, so that was searching the about file, or I can choose something else entirely. So this is our global search. So this is just github.com/search. So I typed in Angular there because I know Angular just had a latest release recently, and it's giving me all the search results on GitHub. Now this is a little bit overwhelming, so it's giving me 23.5 million files that include Angular, which is a lot. But what I like is we've got on the side over here is the filtering that we can look at on GitHub. So if I want to look at just repositories, there's still a million of them. Now, Angular is something quite large. A lot of people use Angular, so probably maybe not the greatest example in terms of like narrowing down. But if I want to look at, just users, okay, there's only 35,000 users. There's only 9,000 discussions that include this Angular. But I can go through now, I can look at and actually drill down a little bit more into some of these different areas. So if I'm just looking for users, I'm just looking for commits, I'm just looking for pull requests. I can search by language, I can search by author there. I can search by assignees, I can search by all these different things. So I can now start finding what I need better on GitHub by using these types of terms that GitHub has given us. We can see, we can have a look at all the different things. These are pull requests over here. And we can start having a look at these. Now, again, there's over 100 pages there, so I'm probably not going to find exactly what I want there, but that's all right. Another place we can search for things is topics. So this is the GitHub topics. These are currently being filtered by like popular or featured topics. We can go through, we can look at trending, we can look at collections, we can even look at events, and we can type in what we want here, and we can start looking at things. So say, for example, I always use this example around Hacktoberfest time because a lot of people say, I want to contribute to contribute to Hacktoberfest, but I don't know where to start. And I said, well, go onto the topics page, look under, say you're a Python developer, look under the Python language. English might be your primarily spoken language, so check English as well, and then type in a topic that you might be interested in, say 3D printing or something like that, or I don't know, insect life or something, right? So we can start drilling down and finding the things that we really want to understand on GitHub by using those things there. So here's all the collaboration features. These are in order of how of what I actually showed them to you. So team management, being able to go through and add the types of collaborators that you want on your team. Again, whether they're a contractor, they're coming in temporarily, or whether they're a non-developer and you want them to come in and look at your code, view your code, but maybe not change your code because we don't want that happening. Issues, so projects powered by GitHub issues. So we need issues to build out our projects, and we track all our work in issues, and then we can build out projects with all the different issues for a particular repository or for a repository. Again, so projects we can use for different issues from multiple repositories. We can also bring them across org as well. Like for example, with our wedding one, I had 2 repositories. I had one for my husband and I, and one for just the bridal stuff that I didn't want him to see. And I could add those bridal cards to the GitHub project, but he couldn't see them because he wasn't a member of my bridal one. So I can still have them on the project that says this card is hidden because you can't see. So we can even do things like that, and only people who have access to the repository can look at them as well. Discussions are a really good way to collaborate with our community. We can have them at the org level or the repo level, so they're really good too. Code review and pull requests, which many developers in the room here would be very familiar with. And I showed you that pull request summary that GitHub Copilot can give you. Again, that is only available for GitHub Enterprise customers. Merge queue, relatively recent, came out last year, and also the search for helping you find different things on GitHub. So now what? I've showed you a lot of cool things on GitHub. I've also talked a little bit about DevOps and collaboration and why I think it's important. But what do we do now? We've all sat here and listened to stuff, so what do we do when we leave this room? So the first thing I want you all to do is collaborate. Think about how you can collaborate with people within your team, within your organization. I often mention to people, like, if there's an opportunity for you to collaborate with, say, a different team or a colleague who you've never collaborated before, take it up, because we often learn so many cool things from the people within our organization. If there's opportunities to collaborate on our hobbies or our personal projects, do those as well. Remember, GitHub is the platform for everyone to come together to build and write code. Largest team sport in existence. So some of the takeaways from today is collaboration is a pillar of DevOps. So DevOps isn't just about writing the lines of code. It's not just about the tools that you use, whether you use GitHub or another tool. It's not just about that. It is about collaborating with others to ensure that we deliver what we want as a team to our customers and our clients, and so that they also get what we want, or what they want, sorry. And again, it's as much about culture as it is about the tools. So while the tools are important, things like GitHub are important, things like having access to videos, video cameras, and being able to collaborate with one another, especially in a remote workplace, especially during things like COVID, being able to collaborate and use those tools is important, but culture is just as important. There's no point having those tools there if the culture is, oh, we don't use those tools, or we don't work async, or we don't collaborate or talk to that team, or we don't do this, we don't do that because it's legacy or whatever, right? The culture is just as important as the tools that we choose to use at the end of the day. Thinking about, is our team diverse? Do we actually have a diverse team, or are we all the same? I like using this example when we're like, say you're at a hackathon, right? And this actually happened at a hackathon recently that I went to a few years ago. And they put 50 lawyers in a room together. They were all the same age. They were all the same gender. They all went to the same school. They were all from the same background. They all had about the same salaries, and they're all in a roughly the same personal life situation. And we gave them a problem to solve. And what do you think happened? About 50 of the same or similar ideas or solutions, because they come from the same experience, they come from the same background, they look at problems in the same way. So if we want to ensure that we tackle the problems that we're facing in our workplaces, the problems that our customers and our clients are having, and the problems that we're having internally, we need to ensure that we have a diverse team and that we actually listen to everyone within our team. There's no point having a diverse team if we only listen to the leader, or we only listen to the privileged person in the room, or we only listen to the person of a particular color or a particular gender or particular whatever it happens to be, right? We need to listen to everyone. We need to understand the different perspectives and therefore build out products and services that are going to hit a diverse range of customers. Because guaranteed all your customers aren't the same as well. Teamwork, again, really important. So while it's important to go and collaborate with others, there's no point collaborating and like doing all these things and talking to one another and having meetings if we're not doing it succinctly and as a team. Many of you might have heard the phrase a sporting team with good teamwork and maybe subpar individual skills will often beat a team that has really good individual skills but very poor teamwork, right? That happens whether it's physical sport or video games as well, right? So collaborating and being on the same page and having that good teamwork is really important. So try out some of the collaboration tools and features I mentioned, whether it happens to be some of the features I showed you on GitHub or even some of those other tools. And I've got a link to all those tools there, such as Zoom, GatherTown, Asana, Monday, all the different types. There's so many different tools out there, so I've given you a list of a bit of those. And then ask yourself this question. Does your team and your organization collaborate well? I think this is really important to look at. Like, do we do the right thing? Are we collaborating well? Are we using the tools that we're given in the right way? Are we creating a good developer experience for our developers who are working? Are we listening to the feedback from the people who are using our tools? So I think these are important questions to ask. There's a link to all the resources that I mentioned. So that link will take you to all the research studies that I've talked about, all the statistics I've talked about, so you know I'm not just making them up, and also links to some of the different collaboration tools I talked about with GitHub, as well as others as well. So thank you very much for listening to me today, and I will open up. We've got about 5 to 7 minutes, so I will open it up for a couple of questions if anyone would like to ask questions from today. Quite a lot of you in the room here. It's also, I understand it is very early in the morning still, and many of you have probably not caffeinated yet. So, it's also really hard to see. That's all right. If you do have questions and you're either listening to the recording afterwards or you think of a question around the venue today, please reach out to me. You can find me on pretty much all the social media platforms. So find me on one of these, ask a question. As I said, if I am Twitch streaming and playing Fortnite, feel free to ask about DevOps if you really like. And thank you all so much for listening to me. There are stickers down the front here, so please come and grab some GitHub stickers. I don't want to take them back to Australia, so if you want to take them for colleagues or friends, please feel free. And thank you again so much for coming to my talk and for listening to me today. Thank you all. Enjoy the rest of the conference today, and thank you so much to NDC and our sponsors for having me as well.